Welcome to Get Rich Education. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. Avoiding mistakes in your property's operations is often your difference between profitability and cash flow zero. We're talking about reducing your dreaded vacancy and turnover costs and avoiding income properties with functional obsolescence altogether today on Get Rich Education. MC Laubscher is the host of the Cash Flow Ninja podcast and president of Producers Wealth. He is on a mission to help you achieve financial independence and freedom as soon as possible. He achieves this by integrating the infinite banking concept with real estate investments to increase your returns and recapture cash flow that you are not even aware of that you're losing. MC shares the number one strategy of investors in his holistic wealth creation course at yourownbankingsystem.com.
Would you like to know the easiest way to create wealth and passive income with real estate? This is Marco Santarelli with Norada Real Estate Investments. Now you can access the best deals without the stress or hassle of having to find, renovate, or manage those properties. We save you time by providing you with passive income investment properties in some of the best U.S. markets. Learn more by downloading your free copy of The Ultimate Guide to Passive Real Estate Investing. There's no obligation and nothing to buy. Simply visit PassiveRealEstateGuide.com and get your free copy today. That's PassiveRealEstateGuide.com.
Get Rich Education is brought to you by Ridge Lending Group, Producers Wealth, Norada Real Estate, and Total Control Financial.
You're listening to the show that has created more financial freedom than nearly any show in the world. This is Get Rich Education.
Welcome to GRE. This is that slice of your life where rather than following money, invest in the best real estate markets and make cash flowing income streams. Instead, follow you. Hi, I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. This is Get Rich Education, episode 222. Now, as we talk about avoiding mistakes in your property's operations, including reducing your vacancy and turnover costs, it really demonstrates how wide the spectrum of real estate investing is. Last week, our guest and I discussed big picture macroeconomic forces like inflation, tariffs, and the Fed's interest rate policy and how that affects you as an investor. Today, we're digging into the nitty-gritty nuts and bolts and discussing property operations and how you attract and retain a tenant and how you vet the right manager as well. Now, when it comes to vacancy rate, how do you even find out the vacancy rate in a certain area? Well, first, I'll tell you what not to do. Don't bother checking the United States Census Bureau statistics. It's rather spreadsheet-like and not user-friendly at all. That is a poor use of your time. Census data also doesn't get to the level of specific neighborhoods, and the information is only updated every 10 years. I've talked about how resources like Atom Data and Neighborhood Scout have better information for real estate investor metrics. Your best way to find out the vacancy rate is to ask a property manager that has a large portfolio. No one is going to know better than that. Nationally and over the long term, you'll find that the vacancy rate is between 7 and 8%, which is close to 1 month of vacancy per year. Of course, I hope you're doing better than that because here we regularly try to focus on the better areas. Some beginners don't even incorporate the vacancy rate into their analysis. You've obviously got to. Here's one actionable gem that I've used to help lower vacancy and turnover in my property. When you have a tenant sign the lease, have a clause in the lease agreement that tells that tenant down the road that when they're about to move out, but they've given you that 30 days notice or whatever it is in your area, that you have the right to show the property to the next prospective tenant before that current tenant vacates. So therefore, prospective new tenants can see your soon-to-be available unit while that existing tenant still resides there, say 2 weeks before they leave. That way you don't have to wait for the current tenant to leave before the next tenant starts looking at the unit. If you get, say, a 2-week jump on showings like this, well, 2 weeks, that's 4% of a year right there, and you have just reduced your vacancy rate potentially by 4% with something so simple, just a few sentences in a lease agreement. Now, when I was a kid, I had the best baseball card collection of any kid in my Pennsylvania town. Fast forward to today, and now I guess you can say that I'm a collector of real estate. Real estate from Alaska, north of Anchorage, all the way to the tropics near the equator. Now, how important is occupancy and vacancy rate? Well, in my cold climate properties, I have substantial winter heating bills that I'm responsible for as the owner that I need to pay for in some of my larger apartment building properties. And for those properties, winter brings the highest utility bills of the entire year. But you know what? Despite these high winter heating bills that barely exist in the summer, winter is still the most profitable time of year in these northern properties. Now, why would that be? Doesn't that sound paradoxical? It is due to low winter vacancy. In far northern climates, people don't move so much in the winter. Of course, the winter holidays exaggerate this effect as well. People don't want to be moving sofas through snowbanks. My point is that high occupancy and low vacancy supersede high heating bills. They create a bigger delta. Now, of course, in single-family rentals, your tenant typically pays the utility bills. And, speaking of utility bills and vacancy in single-family rentals, if you buy turnkey or other property and you close on it before it's occupied, and if you close on it before it's occupied, technically it isn't quite turnkey either, but when you get your first property management statement, make sure that you are not back billed for the electric or some other bill to a period of time back when your seller or your turnkey provider still owned it. That portion is their responsibility, not yours. That leads us to another reason that you want to avoid vacancy. A vacant condition, that means that you pay the utility bills, even in a single-family rental, and not the tenant, because there is no tenant. Whether your unit is occupied or whether it's vacant, you have still got to pay your mortgage and your property taxes and your property insurance, of course, so have it occupied. Now, having modern amenities in your unit, that will not only get your vacant unit filled faster, but it also means that you're going to retain your tenant longer as well. And now you have just reduced your vacancy on both the front end of a tenant lease duration and on the back end as well. So then it's about finding a good fit between tenant and property, which means that you want to avoid functional obsolescence. You know how I like to remind you that your property is only the fourth most important criterion for you as an investor? It is fourth after you, the market, and the team. Well, the property is still important. In fact, it's in the top 4. So we're talking about property operations today. And I've got a little trivia for you here. Name the state where 4 of its last 10 governors have spent time in federal prison. The state where 4 of its last 10 governors have spent time in federal prison. Well, I'll give you the answer later today. That sounds like a non sequitur moment here, but you'll soon see how this fits into today's discussion. Listen closely as there are a lot of operational gems here today. We're talking with Daryl, someone that has an extraordinary understanding of what you need to be a profitable investor. Welcome to Get Rich Education.
Hey, Keith. Thanks for having me on today.
Daryl, as an investor over the long term, one can really be of a great advantage if they reduce their vacancy and turnover cost. A savvy investor might have, just say, a 94% occupancy rate in their units over their investing lifetime, but one that's less knowledgeable might only have, say, a 90% occupancy rate. But that difference is huge. That could be 1/3 more cash flow when it comes down to the cash flow number. So tell us some of your best strategies for reducing vacancy and turnover costs, since you have so much experience with this.
Yeah, you're right, Keith. Vacancy and turnover are probably your largest expenses when it comes to owning rental properties. So those two right there, you really need to address. And my opinion is you need to start right. You can't just buy any old property and expect it to perform well. And you need to start right. You need to choose the right property in the right area and give it the right rehab. So many times as a property manager, an investor will call me up and say, hey, you know what? I bought this property. I finished the rehab and we're ready for you to put a tenant in it. And they get us involved at that point. And then we show up at the property and we have to give them the unfortunate news that this property probably isn't going to perform real well for you. So starting right is vital.
Starting right's important. You identify a property in distress, you rehabilitate it for an investor, you get a tenant in it for an investor. But before you even decide which property you're going to purchase, it's so important to decide which submarket and which neighborhood you're going to be in, because you are the one investing dollars into that property before you turn it over. Talk to us more about that right property, right area, and right rehab.
Sure. Well, when you're choosing the right property, you're looking for the things that attract you to a property, that would attract your wife to a property. And that's maybe the most important thing is, would your wife like to live there? Is it a cute house? Does it have good curb appeal? Or do you pull up to it and it's the kind of house that you're ashamed to bring friends to? You're looking for that curb appeal. It is important. People are going to stay in a home longer if they can be proud of it right from the beginning. The good tenants are looking for, a functional layout. Is my family going to be comfortable in this home? Are the bedrooms really small? And are we going to be very cramped? Or do we have, nice sized bedrooms where our furniture will fit? How's the parking? Do we have on-street parking, off-street parking? Do we have a garage? What do we have for storage space? All of these things are very important. If you have a master bedroom and it's got a tiny little closet, that's just not going to work for the lady. And you need to provide, good closets. What's your square footage? If you have a 3-bedroom, 1-bath home and it's maybe 1,000 to 1,200 square foot, that's pretty good. But do you have a 3-bedroom, 1-bath home that has 2,800 square feet? That's kind of bad for many reasons. But, the person that's attracted to that home is going to need more bathrooms than just one bathroom. You're looking at, what does it have? Does it have a functional obsolescence? And what I mean by that is it 4-bedroom, but only 1 bathroom? That's a functional obsolescence. Is it a larger home? Another functional obsolescence could be, did the previous homeowner do a rehab to the property where he added a 3rd bedroom by adding a very narrow staircase coming off the kitchen that you have to kind of duck your head as you go up into the 3rd bedroom that used to be an attic? Or do you have an up to code stairway that he added? So you need to choose your property wisely.
That's so congruent with what we often talk about here at Get Rich Education. You as an investor, I want you to do good in the world and help people provide a product that's clean, safe, affordable, and functional. So we're talking about functional obsolescence here. One of those things, for example, might be if you purchase a home that has a galley kitchen. Most people want an open floor plan. A lot of times that's something that you can go ahead and change and turn from a less functional property into a more functional property by adding an open floor plan. Anything else with functional obsolescence or things you really want to look to avoid with single family homes, especially?
Well, one thing that I try to avoid when I'm investing in a single family home, honestly, are larger homes. As you have to maintain that home over the years, if you have to do a rent ready on a 1,200 square foot home, that's going to cost you a lot less than doing a rent ready on a 2,800 square foot home. So you're probably better off to choose homes that have a smaller footprint, less square feet for you to remodel.
I found that to be true in my investor experience. One of the first turnkey properties I ever bought was more than 2,500 square feet. It didn't bring that much more rent income than a 1,200 to 1,500 square foot single family home. But yet my rehab and my maintenance costs were substantially higher, disproportionately higher than it would have been for that smaller footprint. So let's talk to us more about the right rehab that you do on a property that you've selected.
The right rehab right from the beginning is important. If you're going to spend $15,000, $25,000 on a property right from the beginning, you're wanting to make sure that the right choices are being made and that the right issues are being addressed. It's very possible to spend $15,000 to $20,000 on a property and still have many issues that need to be addressed if you don't start with the right things first. And when you're rehabbing your rental property, you need to start with, number one, making sure that things are structurally sound. Secondly, that they're mechanically stable. And third, that the electrical is updated. Those three things are very important. You start with structural, mechanical, and electrical, get all of those things cared for, and then you go from there with the rest of your budget. But so many times people start with the cosmetic things and they get around to, the mechanical things last. I'd much rather have a good furnace, good central air system in my home that's going to last for 15 or 20 years than to have an older system and a nicer kitchen. The nicer kitchen might have a little bit more sizzle, but in the long run, it's going to cost you more money if you have to come back later and update your mechanicals. So I think it starts with that. And then you go from there into what I call tenant proofing the home. You want to make selections that will hold up over time. So where a lot of investors used to put pergo flooring in their homes, or they used to even pick up a product that was half vinyl, half like a paper or pergo flooring, that sort of thing. I wouldn't recommend doing that. I would recommend going with all vinyl plank flooring, where it's vinyl all the way through, and you can get it for about the same price, and that's going to hold up a lot better than your other types of flooring. Anytime there's hardwood in the home, you should definitely refinish that hardwood. Now, sometimes it is relatively expensive to refinish hardwood, but I've found that hardwood flooring will last longer than any other type of flooring. And if you refinish those hardwood floors, get them sanded down, get them varnished nicely, if you've got to come back 4 years later and touch them up, all you'll have to do is give them a light sanding just by hand, and then you can varnish them again, and they'll be good for another few years. They'll hold up a lot better. Your tub surrounds, a lot of people will just put in a sturdy vinyl tub surround. I don't recommend doing that. I would recommend putting in a tiled tub surround. That's just going to hold up a lot better over time. So making choices in your products that you put into the home that are going to last a lot longer. And you really don't have to spend any more money on these products. You just have to make sure the right things are going in. Your contractor probably is going to want to put in a vinyl surround. It's going to be faster for him to do it, but he's probably going to charge you the same amount that he would charge for putting in a tiled surround.
Right.
They really don't vary their prices too much. So you may as well make sure that you're getting better product put into the property right from the beginning. And then choosing quality fixtures. You don't want a $19 plastic kitchen faucet. Go ahead and spend $150, $200 on a high quality, heavy, good construction kitchen faucet. And chances are you're not going to have to replace that thing for 15 to 20 years.
So it's about making the right upgrade choices and staying current, doing business with someone like Daryl that understands trends. I've been investing in real estate for more than 15 years myself, and I've seen the transition from more than 15 years ago. It seemed that Pergo brand flooring that was glued together planks was a thing to do. Then more manufacturers began to come in and then snap together hardwood flooring that's laminate seemed to be the thing to do. And now it's transitioned more to luxury vinyl plank. And Daryl, we're doing all of this for a tenant. This is somebody's home. This is really important. We provide housing for others. So talk to us some more about that ongoing relationship that you as a provider have with the tenant and that tenant's importance to that investor.
Yeah, you're right, Keith. We do need to provide quality housing, and we should never have that out of our focus. I like to call the properties that we manage homes. They're not houses. They're not investments. They're homes. We're providing homes for good people, and we want good people living in our home. So we need to provide a good home for them. So, making the choices up front with the type of home that you're purchasing and then the type of rehab that goes into it are very important, because then you can provide a good home for somebody that you're going to be very happy to rent the property to. And then as you're managing that property, you want to make sure that your property manager is keeping short accounts with your tenants.
Right.
Everything we're talking about right now is how do we reduce vacancy and turnover cost. And A big thing with that, not only is provide them a quality home so that you can get a quality person in there, there's a pool of people that you get to choose from to put in your home. And with the higher quality home that you have, you're going to be able to choose from, there's going to be a better quality of person that wants to live in that home. So you try to choose the best person from the beginning, but then you want to keep short accounts with that tenant and make sure they are paying their rent in a timely manner. It's just a character principle. We tend to take better care of things that we pay for in a timely manner. As we start to get sloppy on things and not keep up on our payments, we are valuing that product less. And the same thing is true with the tenant in your home. A lot of investors will think, well, I don't want a vacancy, so maybe we should let them slide on the rent a little bit and let them get behind and that sort of thing, because I just don't want the property to be empty. Well, I found that is just not a good strategy, because that person that is getting sloppy or getting lazy about paying their rent on time is also in turn going to get sloppy and get lazy about caring for that home because they're not valuing it.
Making sure the tenant pays the rent on time is a great nip in the bud problem. You can't have any tolerance for that. If you begin to yield there, the tenant will press you in other ways. And you bring up a great point about how when that tenant pays on time, they're not going to let other things slide. They're not going to let things enter their mind like, oh, well, if I pay late, yeah, maybe by the end, yeah, I can just get off without paying all of the rent. So yeah, I probably don't need to do things like, maintain the furnace filters or whatever either. It just doesn't matter. I'm really not being monitored that closely. You don't want that mindset to enter the tenant's head.
You're right. And that monitoring closely is just very important. As with all of us, we all have some form of character issue, and the squeaky wheel gets the grease. If you have a character flaw or you have a problem or an issue, you tend to put things off, right? You don't want to deal with it, but you need to make sure that your property manager is a person or an entity or has a structure where they become the squeaky wheel for that problem and they keep the pressure on there.
Are there any other thoughts on how you screen a tenant and make sure that you have that tenant that fits that product that you provided for them the best way? How do you best ensure that tenant home match?
Well, first of all, you need to look at the history of the tenant, the prospective tenant that you're considering. If they've not done a good job of paying their rent in the past and taking care of their previous landlord, they're probably not going to turn over a new leaf right away and do a great job of paying your rent on time. You want them to go ahead and establish a good track record on somebody else's dime, not yours. You took the time to purchase a quality property and you have a good home that can be given to a good family, and you can be selective. You can be choosy about who goes in that home. And so you want somebody that has a good track record, first of all, of paying their rent and paying their rent on time and be able to verify that. Then, you should always do a nationwide eviction check. Don't just do a local check. You want it to be nationwide. Income's a big thing. Do they have enough income to afford the home? I think at minimum, their monthly income needs to be 3 times what the rent is. But that is a very minimum. It should be more than that to be comfortable. And not only that, but also look at their debt to income ratio. They may have a really nice car and some credit cards and a bunch of other debt that's taking up all of their income and not be able to afford the home. So just looking at the amount of income they have is not enough. So you want to check their debt to income ratio. Then, another thing is their stability on the job, their employment. How long have they been there? What kind of job is it? Is it the type of job that is seasonal? Or if that particular company had a layoff, do they have a job skill that will allow them to get employment again right away? All those things are important.
As an investor, your tenant is a partner in this investment with you, and it has so much to do with the success or the failure of your investment. So We're talking about meeting a specific target with a product and a tenant and how that helps you reduce vacancy and turnover cost. More when we come back. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. Finally, Total Control Financial gives you checkbook control of your 401k and IRA money to invest in real estate. It's time to get your retirement money into your own checking account, but you've got to avoid the little-known tax that you'll pay with any self-directed IRA. Instead, it's time for the QRP. Learn more and get your free copy of the QRP book by text messaging QRP in all capital letters to 72,000. For a real estate investor like you seeking an income property loan, go to Ridge Lending Group, NMLS 42056. Over the years, you've heard President Chaley Ridge generously devote her time to you here on the show as a guest. Ridge provides investment property loans in most U.S. states, and you're going to find out how they've helped more people realize their dreams of real estate financial freedom than any other mortgage lender in the entire nation when you get started at ridgelendinggroup.com.
This is America's Money Answers man, Jordan Goodman. You're listening to Get Rich Education with Keith Weinhold. And don't quit your daydream.
Welcome back to Get Rich Education. We're talking about how to reduce vacancy and turnover costs, targeting that right product and that right tenant. Daryl, tell us some of the best questions to ask a turnkey seller from your perspective.
If I was beginning to interview a turnkey seller, I think the first thing I would ask him would be, what does turnkey mean to you? You're going to have your own idea of what turnkey means to you. You need to find out what turnkey means to that person that's selling you the home, because you could have two totally different perspectives on what turnkey is. And everybody I talk to in this marketplace, they have a little bit different slant on what a turnkey property is. And you may be expecting to get something that's completely different than what you actually get if you don't find out, from that individual turnkey provider, what his idea of a turnkey property is. And then secondly, I would ask the turnkey provider if he is going to provide the property management on that property going forward, or is he going to pass that off to another property manager that he works with or works closely with? What is his involvement going to be in your property going forward? You want to make sure that he has a commitment to that property to make that property perform for you according to what he's selling you. He's going to go over a pro forma, and you're taking a look at what he's projecting that property will do. And you want to find out what's going to happen if this property doesn't perform as you say that it is going to. Another question I would ask would be, this particular property that you're wanting me to buy here that I'm reviewing, where did that property come from? How long have you managed it? Is this a property that was a failure for somebody else and now you're trying to sell it for them and pass it off to me? Or is this a newly acquired, freshly rehabbed property that's ready to go for the first time? Or what is the history of this property?
Talk about how a prospective investor might best identify if a failure is trying to be passed off to them.
Well, I would ask them, do you have properties for sale that were previously owned by other turnkey investors? And why are they being resold now? Am I buying somebody else's failed investment? I find a lot of times that turnkey providers try to resell properties that they've sold in the past, and they're just reselling failed investments without correcting the issue before they resell them.
So we're talking about the interface post-rehabilitation of the property versus transitioning into when a property manager now has control of that property. And it's all about the LTR, the long-term relationship. And an investor has a long-term relationship with that management. So tell us some of your best due diligence tactics for questions to ask a prospective property manager.
I think the first thing I would ask a property manager is, why should I trust you and your company to manage my investment property? And then just sit back and listen to what they say. Do they stumble through their response, or are they very confident in their response? Do they truly believe that you should trust them? And are they able to convince you that they can put their trust in you? You're handing them a property that you've invested a lot of money in. And your success in that investment hinges largely on that property manager. So you need to make sure that you're giving this property to somebody who is confident, who is competent, and who is eager to do the work of managing that property. You should ask them briefly, in a nutshell, tell me your property management processes. And they should be able to bullet point processes for you. They should be able to bullet point them because they know them and it's ingrained in them. They know what they do, when they do it, why they do it, what day of the week they do it, what day of the month they do it, what day of the year they do it. If they're a professional property manager, they should know these things. And your property is going to perform better if it's given to somebody that really knows what they're doing. I would ask them to take you through the life cycle of a managed property. Talk to me about what happens when my property's occupied, what happens when it's vacant. Tell me your tenant make-ready process. Tell me your tenant placement process. And just take me through that whole life cycle of a property. Ask them how often the property gets inspected, what that inspection report looks like, what things are inspected in the property when it does get inspected. You should find out how many properties they manage and how many employees they have or what their staff consists of and what the individual duties of that staff member are. And then, who's your point of contact in the company? Who can I reach out to and have a response quickly and not have to wait days for a response, but I'll get a response within an hour or the same day and get my questions answered. You will want to know how that you receive rental reports and rent disbursements and what the process is there and who you talk to about those reports. As you review your reports every month and you have questions about them, who is your point of contact for that? And then you want to ask them to give you references from other owners that you manage for. Just get some references on them and actually call those people and talk to them. I would do something like this too. As I ask for references, I would say, you know what, trust me enough to send me a reference of somebody who you've worked through an issue with. Don't just give me all the good ones. Give me one where you can think of, and the property manager can think of somebody who you've recently worked through an issue and you'd like to talk to that person and find out how you worked through that issue. You don't want to just get good references. You want to get a reference from somebody who did have an issue and how we resolved it. And a good property manager who really handles his business well, there are issues that come up. There are problems. And he should be very proud of how he handled that problem and be able to tell you somebody that can talk you through what happened in real life when there was an issue. And when you're interviewing a turnkey seller or a property manager, you're listening for, can I trust you? Are you organized? Do I like you? Are you competent? And, Keith, I think it's important that we try to conduct business with people that we know, that we like, and that we trust. If you have people that you deal with day to day that you know them, you understand their processes, you like them, and you trust them, it just makes everything go smoother. And it lets you sleep better at night, knowing that you're working with somebody that you can know, like, and trust. You're making a big investment when you purchase a home, when you purchase an investment property. And I think you should be willing to invest enough to go and visit the marketplace that you're buying homes in and visit the team that you're working with and visit the property manager and visit the acquisitions manager and visit the rehab manager. Visit the people who are going to be working on your property throughout the life of the property and get to know them and get to know their processes firsthand and see the properties firsthand. That will help you to make good decisions and it'll help you to start right. Start with the right property in the right area and the right rehab.
If you can't tell, Daryl is very well thought out. He has specific standard operating procedures that are followed in his company. And I love that about not just getting a cheery referral, but let's get a problem referral. And there are problems with real estate all the time. Your manager's role is to help buffer you and insulate you from some of those problems. But come on, what can go wrong with a piece of real estate? The elements are acting on the outside of the real estate, and then tenants are interacting with the inside of the real estate. So it's certainly a problem fraught industry. and a competent manager helps you retain your return on time invested. But it does take some of your due diligence up front. And as I've often talked about before, yeah, you could invest with 12 turnkey providers across the United States, but that's going to complicate your life. You're going to be getting these property management statements that come in every few days. So I think it's smarter to do your due diligence, invest with fewer providers, and go deeper on them, because there's a certain amount of efficiencies to owning 3 or 4, perhaps, turnkey rentals over the long term with each provider that you're with. So we're basically here talking about how your team, especially your manager, is more important than the property itself. And I think, Daryl, I've often made the case that the geographic market that you're invested in is more important than the property itself as well. If you're buying a cash flowing rental, you better have a reasonable assurance that you're going to have a stream of longer term tenants that are willing to pay the rent. And you've done something so interesting there. You have this interesting geographic arbitrage advantage where you operate in northwestern Indiana. So you sort of get some of these efficiencies of having a highly diverse market, of being in Chicago land, yet because you're on the Indiana side of the state line rather than the Illinois side, you don't have some of these tax down drain problems that you have on the Illinois side of Chicago land. So talk to us more about why Northwest Indiana for turnkey real estate.
Northwest Indiana is an excellent market for rental properties. When you think of Indiana and you think of a flyover state, and most of the state is, but where we're at here in Northwest Indiana, Indiana is called the crossroads of America because of this area here in Northwest Indiana. You have the interstate system that goes through here as it dips down below Lake Michigan, and you have access to a lot of the north through the lakes. You have the rail system that's come through here, and we are very close to Chicago. So we're a hub here of activity. It's really driven our population, and it's driven our industry, and we have really a different economy here than the rest of the state of Indiana. Another benefit that we have is we're very close to Chicago, but we live on the Indiana side. And Indiana is a conservative state. We have low property taxes. We have low income tax. We have a very affordable cost of living. You can buy much nicer house for a much lower price tag here on the Indiana side than you can just a few miles from here on the Illinois side. My office here in Indiana is literally a 10-minute drive from the Illinois border, and I can leave my office and be at a White Sox game in about 35 minutes, and at a Chicago Cubs game, if traffic isn't too bad, in about an hour. So we're located very close to Chicago. We find that a lot of our tenants are people that have moved from Chicago to the Indiana side because they can rent a much nicer property. They can rent a much nicer home in Indiana for a lot lower rent than they can just a few miles away in Illinois. The commute time to Chicago, where a lot of our tenants work in the Chicagoland area, their commute time is actually shorter if they live in Indiana than it is if they live in many of the suburbs of Chicago. You have the rail system here where you can park your car and get on the train and be up near your job site in a matter of minutes if you live here in Indiana.
Forbes names Indiana as one of the top 10 states to do business. There's even a dedicated website called movetoindiana.com because it's such a regional trend for people to want to move from the Illinois side to the Indiana side for so many of those business and tax advantages. And your rent to value ratio is still, even today, close to 1% in these Northwest Indiana markets where you operate. And after your rent to value ratio, the next two most important metrics are property taxes, which are relatively low there. In fact, quite low, in interest rate. And you can only do so much about interest rate. So Daryl's helped put together some information for you. If you want to learn more, you can get more information on this very interesting niche of exploiting this regional geographic arbitrage in an investor advantage market in Northwest Indiana. Daryl, it's been great having you here on the show. You can learn more at getricheducation.com/Chicago about cash flowing investor advantage Northwest Indiana. I'm glad that I know Daryl. I received a high-level introduction to him a while ago, and he's a really good guy with good character. The state where 4 of their last 10 governors have spent time in federal prison is You might have guessed it, Illinois. Poor Illinois has a history with some corruption, high taxes, and pressure for taxes to go even higher, with the state having many either underfunded or unfunded liabilities, and more property owners are getting squeezed. Illinois has property taxes 2 to 3 times that of a similar priced Indiana property. Illinois also has higher state income taxes and a higher cost of living than Indiana. Now, this doesn't mean that there aren't any deals that work anywhere in the state of Illinois. That would be grossly oversimplified. But the geographic advantage of investing in Northwest Indiana, yet having the proximity to a world-class city like Chicago, is very real. In fact, Northwest Indiana is one of the few markets I know of where you can achieve a more than 1% rent-to-value ratio and have low property taxes as well. A lot of these particular properties, single-family homes, have a sale price of about $120,000 or $125,000. Not many other metros have advantageous ratios like this today, although Memphis is one of them. And Daryl actually has turnkey inventory actively available, so it's a great time to have him here for a rather actionable resource for you. Learn more and connect with the provider at GetRichEducation.com/Chicago. I'll be with you next week. Don't quit your daydream.
Nothing on this show should be considered specific, personal, or professional advice. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, financial, or business professional for individualized advice. Opinions of guests are their own. Information is not guaranteed. All investment strategies have the potential for profit or loss. The host is operating on behalf of Get Rich Education, LLC exclusively.
As America's third largest city, Chicago, Illinois has big economies of scale for real estate investors. But there are problems with investing in highly taxed, fiscally strapped Illinois. You can beat it when you invest in Chicago land, staying on the Indiana side of the state line. Your property tax on a median Indiana home is less than half that of an Illinois property. Forbes ranks Indiana as one of the top 10 states to do business. With typical rents at $1,250 and purchase prices at $125,000, Northwest Indiana numbers work. Learn more and connect with the turnkey provider at GetRichEducation.com/Chicago. That's GetRichEducation.com/Chicago.
71% of Americans aren't saving enough for retirement. It's going to get worse as people live longer, and you need to start thinking differently. But you can't lose your time. Real estate is the investment vehicle that's made more ordinary people wealthy than anything else. Keith Weinhold of Get Rich Education is host of one of America's top investing shows, Disrupting Wall Street. He's an international best-selling author, a writer for Rich Dad Advisors, and has been an active income property investor since 2002. He has created thousands in passive monthly income for countless followers, and now he has a free book, The 7 Principles for Creating Wealth in Your Life. Get your copy now at GetRichEducation.com/book. That's GetRichEducation.com/book. Because invest in what produces income for you now and later. Sign up now at GetRichEducation.com/book.
The preceding program was brought to you by your home for wealth building, GetRichEducation.com.